Hello and welcome to this first video about Illustrator. So in this video I'm just going to introduce a few things, talk a little bit about what Illustrator is, how it differs from Photoshop, and then we'll also start getting set up for our first little sort of assignment or project, I guess, which will take us sort of creating an image from a drawing, so being able to sort of put something in the background and then being able to trace it and create it. So we've seen Illustrator a little bit before, and I'm just taking an image here that a student has done. And really, what I want to just talk about is that when you're using Illustrator, you're basically creating shapes that generally have sort of one color in it. So I'm just sort of breaking this apart at the moment. Although you can put, I'm simplifying a little bit because you can put different pieces, you can, I guess, gradients and so on in there. I guess there is the image in behind. So let me just pull that away. There we go. I think there. So the person, obviously, they traced their image. So at the back here, you can kind of see. So as I was pulling things away, it wasn't disappearing, but that was because they had these. The image was filling in. So let me just move it all the way back. So that was originally what it was. If I hide it, well, there's a little bit that's disappeared. I guess the student didn't quite trace that. So, but pretty close to everything there. And one thing that's very different between Photoshop and Illustrator is that Illustrator is vector-based. And so if I zoom in on any of these, they are not made of pixels. They're not made of little squares of color. They're made of basically lines and then possibly sort of shapes that have a fill. So what you'll find down here, instead of your primary and secondary or foreground and background colors, you'll have your fill, and then this one with a line through it here, this one hiding behind, is your stroke, so the color of the line. So each of these sort of objects, if I pull one away, okay, and we sort of zoom in on it. Now, I think this one, they've got a bit of a shading on it, so it's a little bit trickier, but there is definitely a color there that is the the edge, what was I trying to say here? The fill and the stroke. That's what I'm trying to say. So the stroke there has different color, and then they've done some sort of fancy thing with gradients inside the hair there to give it a little bit more texture. But yeah, so everything that you can sort of see here is made up of lines, of strokes, of shapes, and they're all sort of in here. And so it's quite a bit of stuff. Okay, so in layer 2, they've sort of put everything and sort of built up their image sort of layer by layer, building on top of it. And so quite a bit of work was done. Again, we're sort of tracing here, assuming that we're not sort of artists, but obviously, if you've got the ability to draw, Illustrator can actually make you a better drawer in certain ways. The tools that it gives you can really make your lines very smooth compared to, say, trying to draw it by hand. So we'll be sort of looking at, how to use Illustrator to develop illustrations, obviously. And like I said, the big difference here between Photoshop and Illustrator is the fact that we're using vectors. And like I was getting into it, and I got sidetracked a little bit, is that as you zoom in on those images, there's no sort of breakdown on the resolution. And so what that gives you as an advantage is you can make your vector as big or as small as you want, and there's no change in the resolution. So it's sort of what they call resolution independent. And that's basically because instead of being made up of all these little squares, which there's sort of a finite number of squares to make up that image, and so if you stretch it out, those squares have to kind of take up more room, and therefore they end up sort of looking pixelated, and vice versa. If you squeeze it down, you're going to have to remove some of those squares. With a vector, really, like, it is just an equation that describes the line. And so as you just scale it up or scale it down, all the information, none of the information is lost or, sort of empty, and you have to sort of interpolate and fill in. Yeah, so what else can I say here? I mean, we've got a lot of tools. We'll sort of explore the tools as we go. Just like in Photoshop, if you go up to Window, if your workspace doesn't look like it is, you can do Essentials or Reset Essentials and get you back to, what we're going to sort of be working with. But let's actually make up a image to start with here. So I'm going to go under File and New, And we're going to do one that's ready for print. And so I just want to do it for paper. So if I come up here and do print, and there's letter size. So we'll do letter size. We'll do it vertical. You could set it up in points if you're wanting to do it. Sometimes people want to do it in inches. Sometimes we'll do it in pixels. So for print, oftentimes inches is better. For web, perhaps pixels is better. So we'll do it. Assume we're going to print it out maybe. We'll do it for inches. So 8.5 by 11, which is your standard paper size. Color mode is always an interesting thing. CMYK is usually for print because that's how ink is done. C, cyan, magenta, yellow, and K is black. That's how it's done. Nowadays, it used to be sort of, okay, you're going to do it for print, do it for CMYK. If you're going to do it for the web, do it RGB. Generally, nowadays, we can sort of just do RGB, and that's probably where that warning is coming in. Okay, it's different than the color space defined in the document profile. Okay. Well, we'll just leave it CMYK. Never noticed that before. But anyways, we'll just create this here. So we've got our document. Now, I do have an image that will be available to you. And I'm just going to copy that image. And actually, maybe I'll save it because then I'm going to place it. I'm going to show you something there. So I'm going to save as, and I'll just save it into my downloads. And then what we will do is we'll simply place it in here. So I'm going to go File, Place. Just let me find that there. Place, there we go. And we're going to place in my downloads here this penguin JPEG. And what we're going to do is we're going to place it as a template. So what it's going to do is it's going to put it sort of in the background. Now I'm noticing here, maybe I should have set my paper to sideways. So let me do this again. I'm going to go edit my artboard and then just do that. So there, I've just edited my artboard and put it landscape. I'm going to go back to my layers here. And you can see that it's automatically put it into the background. So what it's done is it's locked it and it's a layer in the back and I can start working on top. If I double click this, I can also dim it and you can see it's automatically been dimmed to 50%, which is good. So if you wanted it darker, right, we could put it back to 100% and you can see there. Usually though, you want to dim it down so that it makes tracing a little bit easier. Again, it would be dependent on the image, but you can do that. Yeah, and that's really all I want to say here. We can sort of start working with that. I'm going to save it. And you can save it on your desktop, save it in the cloud. I'm just going to save mine on my desktop here. And I guess we'll call this Penguin. And then we'll start tracing. So we'll see you in the next video. If I can spell penguin right. Penguin.